Hello, teachers and homeschoolers. It's Kirsten Larson with another episode of Mentor Text Moment. And today we're going to take a deep dive into Michelle Cusolito and Nicole Wong's Flying Deep. Do you like how I have that little pun in there? I'm going to talk a little bit about how the creator's choices put readers in the pilot seat of the Alvin deep sea submersible. I'll give you some ideas for how you can use this book as a mentor text to help your students write their own day in the life. Okay, so the cool thing about this book is every element is integrated to give the reader the experience of being a pilot aboard the Alvin. So the very first page says, imagine you're the pilot of Alvin, a deep sea submersible, barely big enough for three. So let's talk about the different techniques that Michelle and Nicole use to help give the reader that experience of being there. So the interesting thing in terms of structure is Michelle has picked a sequential structure. She's using a chronological structure, which we typically equate with narrative nonfiction like biographies or books about history. But the cool thing is that Michelle has adopted this approach and brought it to a science book, which is pretty awesome. And the even cooler thing is that in her text, Michelle uses specific hours of the day as kind of signposts for the reader along the way. So let me show you what I mean. So for example, on one of the first spreads, we start at 8 a.m. and we find out exactly what a pilot would be doing at 8 a.m. So 8 a.m., Alvin sinks slowly spinning down, down, down. Your stomach flutters. So she shows us, she marks time along the way, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., noon, and tells us exactly what the people aboard the Alvin are doing. So you experience this passage of time as if you were the pilot. And then her voice actually also supports this idea of being there. So Michelle writes this in a really spare lyrical voice. And that kind of spare text gives a sense of movement and travel, and so does the lyricism in her writing. She uses a lot of alliteration, soft sounds, and onomatopoeia, so it's as if you're hearing sounds from inside the Alvin. So let me show you what I mean. So she says at 9 a.m., as Alvin descends, temperatures drop. Pull on a sweatshirt and hat. Sonar sounds, ping, ping, pop, tink, pop, tink. She doesn't just tell you that you hear the sonar. You actually, as the reader, hear that sonar. You hear the ping, ping, pop, tink, pop, tink. So what a cool way with her voice and her choice of language to underscore that feeling of being there and experiencing the day as an Alvin pilot. So let's talk about some other choices that Michelle makes. So she could tell this book in third person. Michelle uses second person. She writes the book using the pronoun you. In addition to that, she also uses questions to invite a response from the reader. So, for example, she says, your mission, survey the site, confirm thriving life, and collect specimens. What will you discover? So she's putting you in the story by using that you pronoun and making you think about your response to her questions. Now, here's another cool thing. Michelle also uses present tense. A lot of times when we're writing nonfiction, a lot of people naturally choose to write in past tense as if things have already happened. But as part of her choices to help the reader experience the story, Michelle uses present tense. And so the book is almost like a whole scene that we're experiencing minute by minute with the pilots. All right, now here's the cool thing about Nicole Wong's art and how Nicole's art supports this whole idea of being there. So first of all, most of Nicole's pictures are very, very detailed. So it's almost photographic, as if you're there in person. The other cool thing is she periodically provides these little porthole views. So a lot of the art is as if we are outside the Alvin and we see the ocean and we see the Alvin and we see the work that they're doing. But then every now and then Michelle will give a little porthole view, which makes the reader feel like you're in the Alvin looking out. And so this is just a terrible picture of an example of one of those porthole views in the art, which is another way that it really makes the reader feel like they are there in the story. So what effect do Michelle and Nicole's choices have? This is something that would be great to discuss with your students. And then once you've considered that, you could do this activity. So think about, is there a job that you've always wanted to learn about? What would the typical day look like? Think about writing it using the hours of the day as signposts. What would happen to this person in their job at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., noon? Then what happens if you write it in second person using you and in present tense as if the actions were happening right now? Then go ahead and add some sounds with onomatopoeia. If it's the day in the life of an airline pilot, add that roar of a jet engine. What would that sound like? What would the wail of a siren sound like? And write those in. So this is a way to really spice up your nonfiction writing. So I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into Flying Deep, and I'll see you next time on Mentor Text Moment.